it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, the algorithm wants you to feel like there's only doom and gloom. We still have time. India has time to hit that hard right or hit that hard left. Sorry, those are bad terms.
It is a story about the fragmentation of everything.
Yeah, right? The idea is death of the ego.
No, they really want someone's independent thought to come and shake them out of their slumber. Technically, I'm under investigation by the FBI.
Depression and anxiety makes people less likely to tolerate diverse and nuanced viewpoints.
And people who love dogs hate cats. They don't like each other. Doesn't mean you have to only like one of them.
As we're told, unbucks from WhatsApp University.
This WhatsApp University. What, Instagram University is some like Harvard certified place or what? I realized this kid did not want a maid to carry his racket. This is top down from the parents. You know what? I'm gonna skew.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to go 75% things I disagree with.
Yeah.
On my social media. I mean, I'll be infuriated all day.
Welcome everyone to another episode of The Overcorrection. Today's topic is India following in America's footsteps, becoming increasingly polarized and divided seemingly to the point of no return? Or is the situation not as bad as we think? There is a lot at play. The role of the vocal minority overshadowing the quiet majority. The seemingly innocuous introduction of the like and share buttons back in 2011, which changed the socio-political landscape forever. And then finally, as much as we love to blame social media for everything in our lives, aren't these algorithms just a reflection of our own confirmation bias? All this and more coming up for you on The Overcorrection. Stay tuned.
Today we are talking about America. What are we talking about today? We're talking about India. We're talking about, I think, what could potentially be a sad prophetic future of India. That we can look at through what has happened in America.
Absolutely.
We are going to be discussing a very important article written by Jonathan Haidt, an American social psychologist. The article is called Why the Past 10 Years of American Life Have Been Uniquely Stupid.
I think there's a few times I've read an article that felt both like looking into Pensieve, in Harry Potter, there's this device where you can look back in time, but also at a crystal ball where you can see the future. So we'll link to the article. I think it's a must read and I'm excited to get into this with you. So take it away.
Let's start with one quote.
It
It has been clear for a while now. This is on page 4 of the article. It has been clear for a while now that Red America and Blue America are becoming like two different countries claiming the same territory with two different versions of the Constitution, economics, and American history. It is a story about the fragmentation of everything.
Such a powerful and thought-provoking line. And I think that kind of captures or sets the tone for what Jonathan wants to address, right? That how can we be living in this time where people are literally having alternate realities?
If we could psychologically diagnose ourselves as a population, we would have some type of split personality disorder right now.
Exactly. It's like a my truth, right? And why I wanted to highlight this line, especially as we're in elections, is because you are seeing this happen here in India. Slowly, maybe we're not quite there yet in terms of polarization. I think we have still, I'd like to believe in my heart, we have a healthy center. But the largest democratic exercise in the world is underway. On June 4th, election results will be released. Let's assume the BJP wins. You're going to have a whole section of society that is celebrating, this democratic win, maybe an immense mandate that's given to the leader, and exciting times ahead for the 21st century. While an entire other half of that country is going to believe that we have slipped into Nazi-style dictatorship. That is the polls you're looking at. Let's assume the results went the other way, where the Congress won, right after the greatest democratic electoral exercise, which they said was rigged. Their party won, and therefore is a celebration of democracy. So even the logic doesn't hold. So we're literally looking at two versions of history in India, or two versions of the potential future.
And even in each individual person's version, it's changing.
Correct.
It changes based on what happens next, what I believed before.
Exactly.
We win, elections not rigged. We lose, elections rigged. And this is somehow a consistent line of thinking.
Yeah. And I think where we are now we're still not as far as where Jonathan is saying America has reached. But interestingly enough, you and I were there in America when this was starting, right? I think you have a great story, Rohan. I want to hear this again.
So we were in college between the years of 2012 to 2016. The
Right.
word woke literally got invented in those years. I remember going to college with a completely different world and leaving it in a completely different world. Left college the year Trump got elected.
Yeah.
Insane times. And I remember one specific incident is in the second year of my college, so it would have been 2013. We got an email saying that the FBI has launched an investigation into a hate crime that occurred on our campus. On a chalkboard in a classroom, F.U. Beener had been written in large letters and left there. Beener is a derogatory term for Mexicans. Well, I was like, holy shit, this is the first time the words FBI have been used in an email sent to me. Because it was addressed to me and it had the FBI. I was like, technically, I'm under investigation by the FBI. The
Right.
whole college was.
Yeah.
2 days later, we got a mail. This is to update you on the FBI investigation that was ongoing regarding the claim of hate speech. Now, it was claim of hate speech, by the way, because they discovered that the F.U. Beener was written by 2 Mexican students and left there. When these Mexican students were later questioned, they said it was part of a creative expression exercise for their political science class. And they wanted to feel how a student might feel if they went and saw it written. So this is me and you sitting there. It's like, let's write F you Indians on a board and just sit at it and look like, man, how does this make me feel? Like, let's like really analyze how this makes me feel. And this will be good insight into race relations in America.
Yeah.
Now, this is all obvious bullshit. Even then we were like, man, this does not, we knew the explanation was crap, but we didn't know what it was actually pointing towards. It was pointing towards this pernicious culture where they were basically wanting someone to take a photo of that and post it and have it go viral.
Yeah.
That's what it was. They
Yeah.
didn't care for the truth. It was the beginning of the post-truth era.
Yeah. Right? Chasing virality.
Chasing virality. And that comes at the heart of how Jonathan Haidt explains
Yeah.
the huge division that has occurred and has absolutely fragmented our society.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, it's funny that you say that because similar to the story you were saying, even the college that I went to, we had a couple of these Flashpoint events. And again, at the time, we didn't know where this was heading. So at this first one, I think that, you know, one of the groups on campus wanted to have a minority-only discussion where non-minorities were not invited. Already kind of problematic because, you know, how do you define that? Like, are you checking passports? Are you checking, you know, so who's allowed, who's not? Then some students protested that saying, you know, this is obviously discriminatory. But what was nice to see at the time was that there was some kind of compromise. You know, there was the Flashpoint event and then people came together and said, hey, no, let's talk this out and figure out a way we can do this.
White kids sit outside in the back.
Yeah, or like some town hall happened there and you know, there was some outcome at the end of it. And this was still at a time where Twitter, Facebook, things like that were not quite that big on campus yet.
Yeah.
So there was that ability to have a compromise and a discussion. And you could even see that change because that happened, I think, in my second year or my first year. But by the time we reached the third year, there was another Flashpoint event, right? And there was not much compromise. I think the one institute wanted to bring a speaker on campus, and then some people said that how can this happen? And then they kicked the institute off campus, right? Leaving aside whatever was going to be discussed, already you could see a shift in the willingness for people to engage with opinions that they might disagree with, right? And I think Haidt comes to that in his piece. But yeah, I think we were there at essentially at the tipping point.
Yeah.
Right.
And while I think a lot of the first few examples came from, I'd say, media excesses of the liberal or the leftist thing. This has gone all the way to the other side. Now you just have a free-for-all. Everyone's mode of communication is excess, right-wing, left-wing. It's all extremist points of view.
Yeah. And the question here is, why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about America here? Right? And you alluded to it earlier. It's because I think this piece is ominously prophetic. You can see this slowly setting in to India, right? As with most things, that kind of cultural dilution starts at the elite level. But in India, the thing is, if it starts at the top of the pyramid, it's okay. But if it percolates down, then you're increasing the sheer mass that is going to engage with this kind of behavior. And then that's a very scary place to be in. Both, extreme right and extreme left.
I think there are some parts of this article where he points to studies that are actually quite optimistic.
Yeah.
And we will get into the reasons for that. So let's get into the hidden tribes part of this, which I think is absolutely fascinating.
Absolutely, yeah. So, this study that he's referring to, the hidden tribe study in the US, essentially found that the two most extreme groups, which were labeled as devoted conservatives and progressive activists, were actually the whitest and richest of the 7 groups, suggesting that America was being torn apart by a battle between 2 subsets of elite who are not actually representative of the broader society. Right? Now, if we were to take this and look at how it can apply to India, right, it's the same thing. It is 2 essentially subsets. So you're being torn apart by a battle being fought by the vocal minority.
Exactly. It's the vocal minority and having a bigger voice than the quiet majority.
And that is being amplified essentially by what Haidt says in the article is that sometime in 2011, Facebook launched the concept of a like button. Right? And then that slowly became the share button. But what was sinister about this is that these tools of like and share actually encouraged dishonesty and like a mob mentality, right? So users were not guided by their true preferences, but by their past experiences of reward and punishment, right? So when they asked that Twitter engineer who was involved in the retweet button, he said, I think we might have handed a loaded gun to a 4-year-old. Right? So they didn't know what they were stepping into. And obviously, these tools are now all pervasive in India as well. So we do have time to course correct, but time's running out.
One of the solution he points out to is real social media responsibility.
Yeah.
Verification should be a must.
Right. What's the one he suggested? That if 2 people retweet it, the third must be forced to essentially read it before they can retweet it or something like that. So kind of like they might go ahead and reshare it anyways.
They don't let you sign agreements without scrolling all the way to the bottom. No one reads those, so there's always ways to get around it. But there is at least some idea put forward in there saying that, you know what, it would be wrong of you to sign it till at least you can prove to me you could have theoretically read it.
Yeah.
You'll see a video put up on the internet, a 30-minute video, within 2 minutes, this is gold.
Correct.
Or this is garbage.
Yeah.
You can't possibly know that. Yeah. It's a 30-minute video that was posted 2 minutes ago.
Yeah. Or as we're told, unboxed from WhatsApp University.
Yeah. This WhatsApp University. What, Instagram University is some Harvard certified place or what? To get your news on Instagram.
But that's where we've reached. It's an instant labeling without actually going into it. That's why I would challenge this is that I'm a believer that technology and social media has been unbelievable way to empower a lot of Indians because we were less developed. It's allowed people to reach out to people that they've never had the chance to, access new markets, learn new things about the world, educate themselves. So I think it has a tool to be really good.
Don't fuck with cats. You seen that?
No, what is this?
It's insane. It's basically a documentary about this guy who posted a video of himself killing a cat on the internet, and the social media world who watched it played detective and tracked him down. And spoiler alert, he ends up actually, I don't even know if I want to give it away.
What does he do?
he ends up being a murderer, like a real human murderer.
Holy
and social media tracked him down.
Yeah. I mean, wow, the world is a messed up place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you can do anything on the internet, but the idea is don't fuck with cats.
Like I think I was telling you this.
That's one place we're not polarized on. Everyone on the internet loves cats
And dogs, dude.
and dogs.
You know what?
And people who love dogs hate cats.
Yeah.
I never got that, dude. People are like, I'm a dog. Are you a dog person or a cat person?
Yeah.
I was like, they don't like each other. Doesn't mean you have to only like one of them.
Yeah. No, I think there was a stand-up comedian that said this in the US talking about like gun control. You know, the only way we'll have strict gun laws in America is if like someone goes and one day shoots up like a puppy kennel. You know? Then you really don't fuck with dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Then you're gonna see the NRA change gun laws overnight. Anyway, not to make light of a very sad thing, but to basically come back to the study, I think that there is tremendous hope and empowerment that can be given to individuals in India through social media. But I think this article shows that there are signs that this can also be very detrimental to society if not managed carefully. I'll just read one more line, which I found very interesting. You know, it essentially said that the two groups in the hidden tribe study, right, the devoted conservatives and the progressive activists, they were the two groups that showed the greatest homogeneity in their moral and political attitudes. So those who express sympathy for the views of the opposing groups may actually experience backlash from their own cohort. So social media makes a political system based on compromise come to a grinding halt. That's Haidt's quote. And then I was again thinking about India. Oh my God, we can see this happening here.
I was joking about it. People are so passionate about politics.
Yeah.
And they're so passionate about sports. But with sports, like, they're willing to have an open dialogue. They're like, Man U fucking sucks. Right? Man U effing sucks.
Yeah.
And no, Arsenal is the best. And no, Arsenal sucks. And, they're willing to hash it out and break bread after that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think football teams are as important as political parties are. But there is something to be said about their love for football and wanting to have a good game of football is where it stems from, rather than just hate for another team.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing transpiring, right? So people are more likely to say there's someone that believes, fairly so that, sometimes I think the ruling party goes way too far, right? They're not willing to maybe come to the middle because they're afraid that the extreme there would disown them. So we're going to have to actively fight that in India because we still have time, I think, because there's still a large amount of our population. Like you said, the grind is so real. So they're not as constantly plugged into discourse as a lot of other countries have. We have time to guide people in the right way. Not censorship. I don't support that at all. But guardrails.
You have to fight the algorithm, which is something we spoke about in our first episode. You have to actively fight the algorithm to not let it put you in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And you have to fight the algorithm and you have to fight your own confirmation bias. You can beat every algorithm in the world, but your brain is going to point you towards what it wants to believe and what it does believe.
Yeah.
So I would argue, don't play it 50-50 when you're fighting the algorithm. Skew hard against your own opinions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can't deprogram your brain the same way you can just manually deprogram your algorithm.
Yeah.
You should be listening to more of what people of points you disagree with than and not just 50-50.
Correct. Which at some level in like statistics and science and the scientific method, what I found interesting is it's never confirm your theory. It's always, can you disprove the null hypothesis, right? I think that's how it always was. So can you take this to be true and then disprove this null hypothesis?
It's a valid form to prove A.
Correct.
You can prove not A.
Correct.
So if I can prove not A can't exist, it's a proof for A.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot to learn, but you mentioned something very critical, which we see is causing this divide even further and further in India, is confirmation bias. And Haidt in his quote, he puts it point blank on page 18. He said the most pervasive obstacle to good thinking is confirmation bias, which refers to our human tendency to search only for evidence that confirms our preferred beliefs. Now, why I think India is slipping into this very rapidly is because of the media agencies not doing their part, both on the left and the right. But curiously enough, the role foreign media has also played in India. I want to read you this job posting, Rohan. This was a job post by the New York Times for a correspondent in India, right?
You're applying?
No. I don't think I'll get the job.
You don't think you'll get the job?
Yeah.
Why? Read the posting.
Yeah. So the job posting, it starts with some, nice platitudes. Domestically, India is a melting pot of people and languages grappling with different questions of class and wealth disparity.
Wow.
Yeah, already bizarre job post, right? Tell me my CTC, tell me my salary. Anyways, and India's once fast-growing economy is again showing signs of stalling. This is before India was right now the only country with the highest GDP growth rate projected, by the way. Anyway, so India's future now stands at a crossroads. Mr. Modi is advocating a self-sufficient muscular nationalism centered on the country's Hindu majority. That vision puts him at odds with the interfaith, multicultural goals of modern India's founders.
No, they really want someone's independent thought to come and shake them out of their slumber.
Yeah, I was stunned, Rohan. Recently, again in the New York Times, Swapan Dasgupta, who's considered to be, let's say, a more conservative commentator in India, he actually gave a very explosive story where he said someone from the New York Times actually reached out to him, saying, "Hey, Swapan, we want to get your thoughts on India because so far we've reported in a certain way, but clearly if 500 million plus people are voting for this gentleman in a democratic exercise, there has to be something to it. We want to get an understanding of that side of the story."
Okay.
He reveals in an article on Open Magazine that later this journalist from the New York Times that reached out to him had to go back to the editorial team. The editorial team itself said, "Look, I don't think we should move forward with this story because it goes against their editorial line."
And again, bringing us back to something that we've touched on before. It's like if they published an article slightly disagreeing with some type of sentiment they've expressed before, they would be taking an L.
Correct.
Accepting that they have changed their mind, or maybe there's another perspective, is like, "Oh, I lost. I was wrong before. This is an absolute ruination of all my legacy."
Correct. Yeah. So you're
Which
right.
is not the case.
Yeah. At some level, I can't help but also feel bad for the news agencies because they're now stuck in the same game.
I don't think individual people are so bad.
Yeah.
I think that they have deadlines and they have TRPs and whatever the metrics they use to measure it.
Yeah.
And all the studies show that this fragmented society is not going to want a slightly conservatively leaning article published in a liberal magazine.
Yeah.
That article will do only well in a conservative magazine. But the responsibility is on editorials. You can decide whether you want to follow a trend or you want to set a trend. A big corporation, of course, has to read the pulse of the nation and respond to, say, trends that are going on. But once you reach a certain size, you are not just a trend follower. You can set a trend.
Correct.
And that is where I think some of the larger publications, which perhaps are the beneficiaries most of this extreme polarization, may have to take a hit.
Yeah.
Take this L.
Yeah.
Take an L in your TRPs. Take an L in your profits.
Yeah.
And don't think changing your opinion or putting out something that is not the best for your ratings as taking an L. That's not taking an L. That will be a W. And I truly believe that free market will reward this in the long term.
Exactly.
It is not going to be something that is going to be financially ruining for them. In fact, if they continue this, this will be their financial ruin.
Exactly.
The free market will absolutely reward this because we need it.
Yeah. It's a journey towards having a more balanced view on the truth, right? I mean, and that's why I know that they are capable of doing good. In fact, New York Times ran a recent story based on the Israel-Hamas war. They've done tremendous reporting on it. Very gruesome, very violent. And they covered one element earlier on of large-scale sexual assault done by Hamas.
Okay.
On the communities that they terrorize in the attack. And they had a full expose on this article. But when you went to the comments, people were already like, "Oh my God, New York Times, classic sellout." Right? So you can't even try against the mob. You can't.
I
right?
never thought I'd be feeling bad for the New York Times after all of this, but
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, because that is an attempt to try and break that bias, right? Because otherwise their reporting has been balanced. Yeah, what Israel is doing now is very bad, but the attack was bad. They've been towing that line well. But, you step even slightly out of the line. And once again, it's actually the vocal minority that is trying to shut you down. So probably most people are like, yeah, this is bad. And they're reading New York Times and they're happy. But it's that vocal minority that gets amplified. But that's what Heights is saying, right? Height is saying that the algorithm is pushing the negative opinion more.
And the vocal minorities on both sides, on both sides completely.
Yeah.
Okay, I never, whatever my personal leanings may be, I don't want to at all pretend that this is not a bipartisan problem as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's quite a sad state of affairs, actually.
Yeah.
That the free market is punishing, I think, what it will eventually reward.
Exactly, right? Like having moderation of the extremes instead of having the extremes run riot. I think we have to find a way to do that.
Maybe we should all try to be the bigger person,
Yeah.
and let's shut down the views, like be more critical of our own views first.
Correct.
Before we are of someone else's. If we can find that ability to do that,
Yeah.
I think, and India has a very self-reflective philosophy.
Correct.
At its core.
Yeah, right? The idea is death of the ego, right? Can you be above your own ego? And that's a very hard thing to get to. But a lot of this also stems from ego.
Yeah.
But I think that's a whole other conversation. But one part, again, that Haidt talks about, which I see happening more in India, which is a sign of bad things to come, is that, but we can avoid it before it's too late. So, he's saying that social media has led to greater rates essentially of anxiety, depression, self-harm. And what depression and anxiety depression and anxiety makes people less likely to want to engage with new people, ideas, and experiences, and less likely to tolerate diverse and nuanced viewpoints. Right? So after 2010, which incidentally we saw in our universities, there was a trend to disinvite visiting speakers that you didn't agree with. Because the students found the words of those speakers emotionally devastating and a form of violence. And why I think we're not yet there in India, it's still, I feel like the center is strong and people, like we were saying, they voice their opinions whether you like it or not. You can be triggered by it, but nobody cares. You go back to meet your grandparents after many years and you're like, wow, you've become fat. Like, no, hi, hello. And that's kind of like, it's harsh and not probably good. But that's very much how it's been. And I think so you get used to dissenting opinions already, right? Or tough opinions that can be emotionally devastating.
Like my grandmother is so removed from caring what anyone thinks. She has cancelled the whole world. So she does not care about who. She has cancelled the world. She's living her life. She's lived a great life, and you literally cannot affect this woman.
Yeah. And I think
it's good that we have people like that in our culture. And I think every one of us in our families has that family member who just does not give a shit.
Yeah. And more than see it as something that you need to get rid of entirely, I think it could even be an interesting way to see it as a brake check. Sometimes when you're driving and you're like, wait, I just want to make sure my brakes are working. Just give a little tap on the brake. So engaging with them might be a brake check. Like, hey, am I going too far into this dark hole that will be very hard to come out of, into this kind of vicious cycle, as opposed to engaging with people, which should be a virtuous cycle always. But why I think this is even scarier in India and started in the US, and Haidt talks about it, is that this is starting at a young age.
Oh my God.
With the youth, right? So he talks about the reason being that, using his words, is that, the loss of free play, unsupervised free play for kids is because childhood has become more tightly circumscribed in recent generations, right? And I still think we have time to avoid this route because, in our generation, you and I grew up with so much unsupervised free play, right? Like I used to go sleep over at friends' houses. It didn't, parents were never around. You could do whatever you want. And that's how you learned. You learned on the football field. You learned with fights. You went for a sleepover. You actually didn't like the friend's vibe, but you couldn't bail.
You got pasted.
Yeah. You
got pasted.
Yeah.
Like some of your friends put toothpaste on your face and you start crying and then they laugh at you.
Yeah. And it's things that I think can overall contribute to your ability to take what the world will eventually throw at you. But I think again here we're seeing parents coddling more and more.
I was playing badminton one day and I saw this kid I knew, 8-year-old kid, walk up to the court, and I've hit around with him before, I know him. And his maid walked behind him carrying his water bottle and his badminton racket. And it just bugged me. I don't know, maybe I'm like old now or something. It just bugged me. I was like, hey man, why is she carrying your racket? And he just looked at me confused. He's like, he had no idea. He's like, I don't know. It just kind of like, it scratches my neck. And all his friends around, I grabbed his cheek. I was like, oh, that's so cute. Is your neck okay? Bro, this kid turned purple, ran to his maid, started grabbing the racket from her. She thought something's gone wrong. I was like, listen, chill. She thought she'd done something wrong. That's how, like
how messed up
the situation is.
Yeah.
And then he's fine, and he's been carrying his racket every day.
Yeah.
And I realized this kid did not want a maid to carry his racket.
Yeah.
This is top down from the parents.
Right.
Again, another point, just because labor is so cheap in this country, we think that anything that we don't have to do, we shouldn't do.
Yeah.
We should never do dishes.
Yeah.
We should never carry our own badminton racket. We should never have to park our own car.
Yeah. Yeah.
We think it's not important. And part of that is the coddling of ourselves and the children.
Yeah.
Now, maybe you as an adult feel you've earned these luxuries. These kids need to learn somehow that, yeah, sometimes the racket may scratch your little thing and you put it under the collar of your shirt. You know?
Yeah. Or deal with it. Yeah. It hurts.
It hurts.
Yeah.
You're coming for a sport right now.
Yeah. Like wait till you apply for a job and get rejected within 5 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Of you applying. It hurts. But you take it. You take it like a champ and you move forward.
Yeah, but I have a lot of hope for kids. I truly believe however messed up the previous generation is, when they're born, they're pretty pure.
Yeah.
And we have a lot more conditioning ourselves than, even though they may be on a track to be far worse off if social media just takes over and this excessive coddling takes over. I truly believe that there is an innocence to children that might be the only thing that can save us. I though cannot change now how I was raised.
Yeah.
But we can make such radical changes in kids. I've seen this myself.
Yeah.
With children I've interacted with.
Yeah. And you see it. That's why there's so much hope. Like, and I think he ends his article with that same kind of hope. It's like, look, it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, the algorithm wants you to feel like there's only doom and gloom. The algorithm wants you to feel like there's only doom and gloom. But that's not the case. There's a way out. It comes with, having courage and conviction in your belief that, we can make this an amazing world to live in. Where, different ideas and viewpoints are accommodated and debated. And I think we still have time. India has time to not go as far into the abyss as America has. Even America has a way to get out. But I think India has a time to hit that hard right or hit that hard left. Sorry. Those are bad terms. India has a chance to
take a U-turn
from driving off that cliff, right? And I think that we should take a lot of hope in that and work towards it.
That's what debate used to be. Debate used to be, which side how do you feel about this topic? Or you feel A, you're arguing B.
Yeah.
That's how you made great debaters and critical thinkers.
Yeah. And I love that, right? Because you could never choose which side you're on. So you might get a topic that you completely disagree with, but you have to still take a stand. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we need to bring back.
And it wasn't just to mess with you. There's a reason to make you go against your confirmation bias.
Yeah. And I still think that clubs and societies and schools in India still practice that, right? In a big way. And I think that's a saving grace for sure.
Yeah. Families in India practice that. That way we're much more vocal with each other about our opinions about things. Your uncle will just say fuck this government. F this government.
But you can't cancel your parents. You can't cancel them, or you can't. I guess but in the US you even have that happening.
Yeah,
right?
They'll cancel. I don't talk to my parents anymore. He's a Trump supporter. He's like obsessed with Joe Biden. I'm not going to talk to him.
Yeah, and they love you. They're your parents. Figure it out, right? Or can you coexist?
Yeah.
That is what it comes down to in the end.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I can't date someone who's politically on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
I used to see merit in that thought. Now I just think it's scary.
Right? Because it doesn't... Exactly. I don't think it makes too much sense. Yeah, some people say, no, but that person believing that denies my very truth.
Or your values or something like that. And I think there is a connecting point between certain ideologies and certain values.
Yeah.
It's just that if before they were here and here, now they're here and here.
Correct. So I think the whole goal is, can we...
I don't want everyone to think the same thing either.
Yeah.
Like, that's never going to be the case.
Yeah.
But can we can we have not done this overcorrection? Because I think one more thing, like someone asked me, why is the name of the show The Overcorrection? Look, overcorrection is a natural part of any change phenomenon.
Yeah.
Think about the pendulum.
Yeah.
When you're far away from the center of a pendulum, okay, the force that is generated by the time it reaches here from having bought it from so far away from the center is so great that it's unlikely to stop. If you're a little closer to the center, a smaller force will get you just over the center and you'll be there. But if it's so far away from the center, man, that potential energy is just going to ram through where you want it to be, take you right there, and that pendulum is going to take a lot more time to come to the center.
True. I guess the only thing you can do is be intentional.
Be intentional. I think, man, I never thought about this. I used to always think, okay, I'll follow 50-50 on social media. And now I'm actually thinking, you know what? I'm going to skew.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to go 75% things I disagree with on my social media.
Yeah. Or even just...
I mean, I'll be infuriated all day. But
or like even just reduce social media. Just like read independent journals, talk to people, get out of the screen as much as you can.
Get off the screen. I'm a big believer in tech and stuff like that, but get off the screen.
Yeah.
It's too pervasive.
Yeah. And, get off the screen unless you're watching the Overcorrection podcast,
Yeah,
in which case you should stay on screen.
Stay on the screen. Go watch all other episodes right now. You don't need to talk to your family, guys. Just lock your room doors, turn the shit on, and don't vote.
Absolutely.
And we will link this article in the thing. I highly recommend reading it. There's another article written by him, The Coddling of the American Mind. If you're more auditory about these things, there's a lot of videos of Jonathan Haidt online. Highly recommend you go watch them. Sometimes I've found that before getting it's a 36-page article. People aren't big on reading nowadays, but I also would not be able to commit to a 36-page article if I did not, say, have any background from the author, or had it not been so highly recommended. But
absolutely. Yeah, see, that's the strength of video, right? So if you're watching video, make sure it's Haidt videos, The Overcorrection, or The Casuals, the greatest sports show right now on TV.
The Casuals. Man, those guys.
Yeah.
They did this episode where they went to the Zoroastrian Premier League. Oh my God, dude, these guys are nuts.
I love it, man.
Just getting kisses from uncles and, talking. And, Parsis are just, outrageous people.
Yeah.
The most fun people in this country are Parsis.
Yeah, outrageously funny.
Bipartisan opinions this week, Parsis are outrageously funny human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that's it. Thank you for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more episodes coming up.